Folks, welcome back to the Mind Your Miles podcast. My name is Nick, and I'm here with my boy, Will Baldwin. Willie B, how we doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm cool.
Just living the dream out there in Boulder, Colorado?
Dude, we had a little what do they call it? False spring or whatever, like where you have those like
Ooh,
four really nice sunny days. So got me feeling good.
nice. Just enough to get you through that last little stretch of winter when you have that little fall spring. It's just that nice little bit of hope. Cool. Awesome. We've got a bunch of good topics here today. We just spent, the last 20 minutes here brainstorming, trying to think what we want to talk about, and we stumbled on some good ones here. So we're going to start here by talking about, those plans you find online, those copy paste, download the PDF, Hal Higdon, Fitz plans, Jeff Galloway kind of deals that essentially you can get for free that are your way to run your first marathon. We've kind of looked into some of these, and we're gonna talk about what we like and maybe what we dislike about these. Probably more what we dislike, if we're being honest. And then we're going to talk about one thing that we would recommend for someone who wants to break 4 hours for the marathon. So you're looking for that one secret to get you under four. We're going to get that locked and loaded here for you. But first, let's talk about some plans here. Well, you and I have both been going through advanced marathoning, the Fitzinger book. We've read the Jack Daniels running formula. We've been in this space for quite a while, and we're familiar with all the stuff that's out there. So let's talk about a couple of the plans, some of the coaches, and talk about maybe what you like or dislike about them. So I will start with you and maybe talking about Fitz or Higdon and kind of going from there.
Well, yeah, just before we were kind of talking about how we get a lot of clients for personal coaching who have come from one of these plans. It's very common, like either a VDOT plan or Hal Higdon, Fitz, Galloway, because there's a lot of free editions on the internet. And yeah, if you could get something for free, why would you pay a monthly fee to us? So, but when we were talking about just how bad a lot of them are and like some of the things that we really hate or that we would never use, um, yeah, just how surprising some of them are. Like even VDOT and Jack Daniels, we love that book and a lot of the stuff in it's good. But when you look at those plans, like some of them come out the gate like so hot. Like some of them, like the first real workouts, like an 8 mile threshold or something like that. Which
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at this. Just this Fitzinger plan right now. I got it open. The up to 55 miles per week, a 12-week schedule. So up to 55 miles a week. We're assuming somebody who's probably not, maybe he's only been running for a couple of years. You're only running 55 miles a week and you're training for a marathon. Like you're likely not like a sub 230 kind of guy. And in week 4, he has you doing a lactate threshold, a 10-mile run with 5 miles at 15K to half marathon pace. That's a continuous, just like LT lactate threshold running. And ahead of that, like there had been no like, oh, we're going to do some mile repeats, maybe 2 mile repeats. There was no buildup outside of running a 4 mile LT like in the second week of the training plan. So just to illustrate, like for so many runners, if they were to just buy this book, pick this up, and then try to execute that plan, like if I were to try to execute this plan right now and I'm running 50 miles a week, like I would be in a
could
world of
not do a
hurt.
10
Couldn't
mile
do it.
threshold.
Yeah.
Well, dude, a great example of that is when I was in college, our pinnacle workout of the cross season was a 10 mile threshold. And it was often like not everybody would make it. It was really, but that's like, these are college, and we were a good college distance running program. That was the hardest thing we did. And the guys ran a little bit more than 55, but a lot of dudes ran in the 60s and 70s and maybe 80s. I was a little bit higher in the 90s. Um, it's an incredibly hard session. And not only is it very difficult, I don't, with newer people like that, I don't love tons of long tempos or thresholds until we're towards the end, more specific marathon stuff, because that's a really hard skill to learn, how to run continuous aerobic. And yeah, so doing something like Ks or mile reps or fartleks to like learn some of those efforts and build that, and then eventually get into 2 miles and 3 miles, and then maybe, a big one I often do is like 2x5, and we work our way up to it. But yeah, coming 1 month in, you're not even, you're self-directing this plan. 10 miles threshold is, it's nuts. Wouldn't
Yeah.
wouldn't ever do that.
Yeah, and also it says 15K to half marathon pace. So like that's a pretty wild
15K
range.
is 10 miles.
Yeah, you're running well. It's 10 miles with 5 miles of lactate threshold, 4 weeks into the plan. So you're running doing a 10 mile run with 5 miles of that at 15K to
Yeah.
L0 half marathon pace. Which again, like if you just break that down into the percentage of your weekly volume you're running at threshold, it's relatively high, probably for someone who's doing that amount of work. It's
Yeah.
relatively early in the build, and like you said, like never for 3 weeks into a build, I would never have someone do just a straight up. All right, we're doing 5 miles at T. Like we're just gonna rip right into that. That's just very difficult, especially for someone at this level. Um, the funny thing is, I think with these plans, you either find that they err on the side of being way too easy, and I would look at a lot of like, and not to fully besmirch like Galloway's run to walk thing. I think that's helped a lot of people just get to the point where they can complete a race, but
Yeah.
even if you try to go to some of the more advanced versions of those plans, I don't know, my Mac is giving me a thumbs up. Advanced version of those plans, like I still think a lot of these plans that people are finding are way too easy. It's all easy running. It's just like how do you go from couch to marathon running 5 days a week without doing anything else but just running with
I don't
no
know
other
where people get those other ones, but yeah, there's a lot, not even the Galloway ones. There are a lot that are just like start you on a long run that's 10 miles, and every week it goes up to 12, 14, 16. And eventually you run like a 22-mile long run, and then you feel like you can run a marathon.
yeah, and
Um,
and for
like you
people that
said,
we
way too easy, just like this is just bland, easy running, or like, or crazy, like, hey, come out and do these big, long thresholds, even though you don't have an experience in running fast.
Yeah, and I think where people like us come in, it's where these plans lack is in like actual nuance. It's like, well, running isn't all this polar. It's not either super hard or it's not super easy. Like it's a lot of in between where there are some super hard things. You're going to do some really hard sessions and you're going to have some really easy days, but there's a lot of other stuff that's kind of in the middle between all that stuff, which I think is what these plans tend to miss.
And when you really strategically build, like you start out with strides and you go to 200s, and then you're doing like really easy fartleks, and then like lighter mile reps, and then those mile reps get into like harder threshold. Like you can just stair step where nothing ever feels overwhelming, but you know your body's compensating along the way, and you're getting faster without something crazy going on.
Correct. And I might just sound, and so I'll flip it and be just a little bit positive about some of these plans because I feel like we've just been tearing them apart. I do think like there is some virtue here. It's people who've never had structure, maybe have never run before. Like it is providing some semblance of structure, and I think there is some value to that. You know, whether I believe it to be limited, which I do, there is some value there versus just someone just trying to figure it out on their own and maybe getting hurt, not doing the right things, or doing some really crazy shit or whatever else they might find on the internet. So there is value to having plans from people who have credentials like Higdon and Fitz and Galloway, Olympians, guys who've been coaching for 50 years or whatever. Like there's value in having those plans out there for folks, but at the same time, like I do think that there's a lot of limitations there. So I don't want to say they're all bad necessarily. There is good with that. And I mean, if you're picking up, advanced marathoning by Fitzinger and trying to go and trying to learn about the process and go through the plans, like there is
It's a good
value
book.
in that. It's a good book. But if you're willing to spend that, $30 on that and you're trying to figure this plan out for yourself, like you might as well call one of us, get a consultation and have us walk you through how we would approach that as well too. Because I think there is a lot of value in that as well.
Can I tell you also something I think is crazy, and I want to hear your
Please.
opinion? Uh, one of those things we forget about because we're too deep in this world. But I was just talking to someone who was writing an article about the phases of training, and they were talking about base phase, and I forget how popular that word is. Of like people love talk about building the aerobic base and the foundation. Um, just because we would never say that, and we would never. I don't know. I don't know if we would have necessarily ever trained like that. There's never like I never ran into a serious runner. It's like, no, I'm base phasing right now, bro. Like, no, just like I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
The way other people think about that is not how that looks in reality. What I mean
yeah,
by that is like those people when they say base, it's just like strictly zone two. And I was talking to this lady, I was like, oh yeah, like, yeah, that's like probably not workouts with doing a lot of strides and strength. And then they were like, you would do strides? Like, it's not just zone 2? And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that's a thing where people think of like this pure aerobic period.
Yeah, they would just think of base phase. I'm just going out and running easy every single day, and that's what, and I'm accumulating a ton of volume. Which at no point in my life had I ever, maybe in high school, because we didn't know any better. We weren't in the summertime when we were running. We had no structure. We were just meeting it and running just normally. But even in college, in the summertime, we would have this big packet of training. A lot of it was mileage. It was the bulk of it was mileage, but we had tempo runs every week, and we had strides, and I would still have called that our base phase. It, it was
Right.
just our bulk of training ahead of like the more specific phase of the
Yeah.
season.
Yeah. Like in college, we would specifically, but you would, I don't know if you'd ever, did you ever have something like that in your professional career, post collegiate?
Absolutely not. No, I
No,
mean,
and I've never seen anyone else either. Like you might train a little differently, but like we did that specifically because you literally had no races from May to August. So if you probably shouldn't be working out that much because you'd get burnt out before cross. But for like once you're post collegiate and you can kind of race when you please, you can pick your own schedule. There's really not a purpose to doing like 2 months where you just run zone 2 every day. It doesn't really make sense.
yeah, I don't. You would almost never do. There'd be no. It'd be almost like a waste of time. Like, what are you doing running like 100 miles a week of zone 2 with nothing else? Like that's,
Yeah.
you might feel really strong at the end of it, but I just don't feel like there would be much of a purpose for that. And we would typically, I feel like we would almost always have something scheduled. It's like, okay, like in June we're going to run this half, then we're going to spend a couple months building up for this marathon in October, take some downtime. Then we're looking at a fast half here in January, take some downtime. Then we're going to run a track race in April, May, whatever, try to run a fast 10K or something like that. And then you would just restart that whole cycle again.
Right.
And so you would maybe build your year around 4 or 5 different times when you were trying to peak or run really fast. Um, and when you have a structure like that, yeah, you're going to have periods where you're running more volume, but you're not going to have a base phase. Like that wouldn't be.
No. And like we're doing workouts where it's like, oh, I'm doing maybe only 4 mile reps at 5:10 pace, so I can eventually do 7 at 4:50. It's like you're training to train and you're building off of stuff. But yeah, there is this like myth that if you just run zone 2 for weeks on end, you have this really incredible aerobic foundation, and without that aerobic foundation you can't do anything. But if you're running mileage, you're always building an aerobic foundation, like if you have a lot of easy mileage. So it doesn't have to be completely without anything there.
Yeah, and workouts and doing workouts aren't going to ruin that aerobic foundation
Right.
either. Like, especially if almost all those workouts are going to enhance it. Threshold workouts, VO2 workouts, like those enhance your
Right.
aerobic capabilities. So they're just building on
And
what
like
you've already
they
done.
might not be super hard because we don't have that as good of aerobic capabilities. Like that's why it might be more stride focused, or I use a lot of hills, or like Mike Smith and NAU famously, those guys do hill sprints, sometimes on the treadmill, sometimes regularly, but like that's like
Mhm.
a maybe not so secret of Mike in the summers. They do a couple workouts, but it's a lot of hill sprints and mileage and like some real light tempos, sub T as they call it. That they do like intro to lighter threshold, or maybe up tempo or marathon
Like
pace is what we would call it.
M pace, yeah, steady state,
Yes.
aerobic threshold, AT, like
Yeah.
one of those phrases for sure.
Yeah. But yeah,
Um,
but yeah, we would definitely have that. But that's also one of those things that whenever I see those plans, they never have that. It's like you hop into like tempos. Um, but
I
it's
feel like
not
it's
like
either
the
one way or the other. It's either like you buy some like you download some 24-week plan where all it is just like we talked about earlier, simplification. All you're doing is doing zone 2 work and mileage, and you're just building up mileage over the course of 24 weeks to get yourself to run a marathon. Or it's the Fitzinger plan where you're doing these crazy threshold runs right off the bat with no build up and no lead up into that. And so I haven't seen too many plans where it does kind of find that happy medium. And it gets to like um and we've talked about to some degree internet running culture and the Instagramification and the Twitterification of coaching, where we just look to find a way to simplify complex, nuanced topics or complex, nuanced whatever topics is, and we try to simplify it in a way that looks good on the internet. So zone 2, like it's just like, hey, I did this like 8-week zone 2 aerobic build and I ran a 2:45 marathon. Here's how I did it. And it's just like boom, easy soundbite. Here's what I did. It was all zone 2 focus and there's no nuance to it. Whereas it's just in order to maximize what you're getting out of a build, it should be more nuanced and complex than that.
Yeah, that's kind of, we talked about it with Dylan once, but like it's why people, one of those things that people are obsessed with, like phases. They want to be told they're in the base phase or the build phase, or this is a speed block, or this is the peak. This is exactly where our taper begins, but it's just like, it's just not how we would ever do it in reality. So I don't know. You have to fight against that a little bit. It's always more of like a gradual stair step than it's like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yeah, I call it like with the reverse pyramid. So my camera's all fucked. It's all backwards, but it's like the points of the pyramid are far apart on one end to get closer together at the far end. So we're starting non-specific, working to more specific, and there's a bunch of stuff in the middle that's some specific and non-specific, and it just kind of molds over the course of the build up. But it's not just like, okay, now we're doing aerobic work. Now we're doing threshold work. Now we're doing VO2 max work. Like it doesn't work like that. Like it kind of ebbs and flows throughout the thing. So yeah. Look at the video and see my stupid hand symbols because I can't figure it out because my camera is obviously backwards to what I'm doing. And so, yeah, I look ridiculous, but that's normal.
Okay, before we transition to our topic, what do you think about beard?
I think your beard looks good, man. Yeah, I think a little 5 o'clock shadow. You look like a mountain man. You got a kind of a trail runnery-esque hat on. You've got a little beard.
This is my buddy Drew's company.
What's it called?
Small Brand Mentality.
Oh yeah. I saw that podcast loaded up into our StreamYard feed. I was like, wait, what is this? I didn't listen to it yet. Has it been posted?
Yeah, it's been posted, bro.
I haven't been. My podcast diet has been pretty consistent recently, so I'll have to go find it.
Will you listen to it this week?
I will listen to it this week. Yeah.
Okay, the hat will make more sense afterwards.
Okay, great, perfect. Go listen to Small Brand Mentality wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, mostly listen to this one, and then if you've gone through all of our episodes and you rated us, then you can listen to Drew's.
Yeah. We need to get some of those numbers up on those latest ones where so get them here.
We're not in it for the numbers, bro. It's for the love of the game,
Yeah, but numbers make you feel good. It's like, ooh, that many people listen to this podcast.
I did a track workout this morning too.
Oh, nice. How'd it go?
It was good. My first workout since Black Canyon.
Okay. Nice. What was the workout?
It was cool. It was a good one. 3 sets of 400, 300, 200.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. No paces, just vibes. Like, try to get a little faster each rep, each set. Which I did. I broke 75 on the last 400, sub 5-minute pace.
Okay. There we go. We're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, just good. Just like little intro to speed, kind of. You could almost call it longer strides almost, but people say that about everything.
Well, I'm kind of in my base phase right now, so I've been doing a little bit more aerobic work. I did 3 by 2 miles, kind of at like an M-ish effort, M to T effort last week, with 2 minutes in between. It was like 6-minute pace down to like 540s. Spent most of the time between like 540 and 550. So,
are you still doing that thing where you just absolutely haul every day and you're running really fast?
I've had to back off a little bit. I hit 50 miles last week for the first time of this build, so I'm going to be at 50 the next 2 weeks, and so I've had to back off a little bit because I've been building up a little fatigue.
Dude,
but even so,
really cool
most of my days are sub 7. So,
my mileage has been pretty low, like also around 50, and I usually for easy days, a lot of times if I'm by myself, I'll go by heart rate. That's because I have a good heart rate monitor and I've like actually tested my zone 2 and I know that stuff. And like the last couple weeks, like sometimes in my zone, I'll run like 720 pace, which I'm not that fit. And I'm like, oh, that's fast. But I'm like, I'm just not running that much. So I'm like, everything's really fresh. And I'm like, oh, normally at this point it'd be a lot slower, but it's like, oh yeah, as there's a point where your volume's a little high and you're not fit. And so those things slow down and then it eventually evens out. But yeah, like sometimes when you're fresh, stuff just looks better.
Yeah, when I was fresh, I could run and only running 30 miles a week. Like, yeah, it wasn't a big deal to go pop out a couple 620, 630 days, no problem. Now
Yeah.
it's like I'm consistently doing 2-ish workouts a week. Volume's a little higher than it has been, but yeah, we'll see. We're gonna try to get up to 70 at some point this spring, summer. And if I get up to 70, there might be some goals coming later in the year, but we'll
Start running some 80s, bro, and things, and your eyes start opening a little bit. You're like, okay, this is real. I'm getting a little fit. Like,
we got
yeah,
some
it's
hurdles to
exciting.
get over. Right now, Sarah's still off work. She's still on maternity leave, so I have a little bit more freedom to get out. Once she goes back to work, like it's going to get a little more difficult to get like better consistent runs in. So we'll see. TBD on that, but I feel good about it. We'll see. Anyways, next topic. No one wants to hear about our lame ass
Yes,
running
they do.
lives.
People love us.
Do they? Do they really? Leave a
Yes.
comment if you leave a comment, and then subscribe if you love us. Yeah, like and subscribe. Watch us on
Uh,
YouTube.
my mom texted me a lot about the last episode.
Oh, nice. Good for her.
She was super into it, man. You made her feel really good, Nick.
Shout out, Mrs. Baldwin.
That's Reynolds. We
Reynolds.
talked about this
I,
last
I I
episode
knew
too.
it. Yeah, I knew it. Yeah, yeah. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, "Oh, that's wrong."
That's my
Anyways,
entire life, bro. Every room she walked in, they're like,
yeah.
"What's up, Miss Baldwin?" I was like, "That's not her last name."
Sorry, Miss Reynolds. I apologize. I won't make that mistake again.
I love my mom. If you're listening to this, mom, I love you. Um. Okay, so you want to talk about our main topic? We were going to talk about. You look like you want to say it.
No, you go ahead.
You want me to say it? We were going to talk about uh how to break 4 hours in the marathon.
Well, the headline, which is going to hopefully grab some views for us, is one thing that we would recommend to help you break a 4-hour marathon.
What people
That
don't know
one
is there's
special trick.
actually a secret workout to break 4. And the
Yeah,
reason you haven't done it yet, that you keep running 4:09 at the Jersey City Marathon, is because you haven't implemented this workout yet.
yeah.
And we have it, and
It's
we will
Yasso
give it to
800s. Just kidding. It's
you.
not Yasso 800s.
Oh man, that's funny. What is Yasso 800s? Yeah, I know
I
you do eight. I know you do a bunch of eights, and then it predicts your. That's like if you can do what your average is, it predicts your pace. But what's the like sets and reps?
I think it's like 8 to 10 by 800 at your marathon pace, which is
Yeah,
not a great predictor.
now it's dumb. I mean, I guess it's something though.
Run 10 800-meter intervals, jog 400 meters to recover between each, and then
400 recovery.
aim to finish each 800 in the same amount of time it takes you to run a marathon mile. So you run a marathon pace time.
Okay,
Not
interesting.
not ideal.
No, it's not Yasso 8s. Okay, Nick. So what is the one thing you think someone should do? How do you break 4 hours in the marathon? Do you have a secret?
Again, so
It's
much of this
9:09 pace. We said that.
909
9:09 per
pace.
mile.
So a lot of this comes down to like what's your background. Again, it's not just like one quick easy answer. Like you have some 4-hour marathon, some 4-hour marathoners who have been running for 10 years and they're trying to break it for the first time. They've had structure. What can we do to make it better? Some are just people who are coming off the couch trying to run their first marathon in 4 hours. Seems like a realistic goal. Honestly, I think to find somewhere in the middle there is some type of workout that introduces a longer duration running at marathon pace. So the one that I threw out to you in our pre-meeting was essentially 5 by 2 miles at M pace with an 800-meter, float jog recovery in between. So that way we're getting 10 miles of marathon pace running over the course of maybe this one's like a 16-ish mile run. We're building up some fatigue and we're also practicing our nutrition at the same time. So that would be the session that I think I would have a lot of athletes do. And some athletes might progress farther beyond that, depending on their experience level. Some that might be where we peak out. But I think for the vast majority of like a 4-hour marathoner, having somebody do a straight 10-mile marathon pace tempo might be a little bit too much. Could be disheartening depending if it doesn't go well. Whereas 5 by 2 miles, you're biting it off in smaller chunks. It's very achievable. You can come out of it with a lot of confidence and also build some fitness as well too.
That's a really good sesh. Did you say at marathon pace?
At or around, I always say marathon effort, but yeah, at or around marathon effort.
Why 9:09 pace and why not a little quicker?
for that particular workout, I think because I view that as like I view that as like a broken up steady state. So that would be taking the place of something that would be just a longer, more continuous marathon pace run. So instead of having you do 10 miles at marathon pace, I have you do 5 by 2 miles because you break it up into smaller chunks, we accumulate less fatigue. We can have you go deeper into the long run. Um, Rather than, and again, I think I mentioned this ahead of the time, it's also just a confidence builder. It's easier to feel good, run faster, and we'll be doing plenty of other work outside of this that's going to be faster than marathon pace. Like the goal here is to get adjusted to the feeling.
Okay, that's fine.
I know there are people who absolutely don't agree with that. I mean, I was talking with my wife Sarah about like how there are some coaches who don't believe you should ever run marathon pace when training for a marathon. Like you should be doing threshold pace and faster work and slower work, and end up somewhere in between there. I like to run a lot of marathon pace, and I always prescribe it because I do think it's important from not just the physiological aspect, but also just the mental aspect as well too.
I definitely, if I had to pick a side, I would go with I could easily be convinced to never do it. I definitely do, like, especially the last 3-4 weeks, hitting some big tempos at goal pace of like, this is that movement. But other than that, everything else I think should be faster. I've just seen some really cool examples of people who did it that way, and it made a lot of sense to me.
I mean, it doesn't. Yeah, no matter how you look at it, it does make a ton of sense. Like just from a physiological, scientific standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. That's just not how I coach. I just think I just
And
feel like there's so much value in it.
I think your background also determines a big point of it, because if you were a pro, running marathon pace is actually pretty difficult.
For
Like,
sure.
your PR marathon pace was probably what, 5:15?
5:10.
Jesus Christ. That's so insane.
Big negative split there too. 70,
Uh,
66.
well, I mean, you're proving my point, but that's absolutely mind blowing. Um, that's embarrassing too, because mine's like 5:22 or 5:23 or something.
Still very
Um,
fast.
I know, but not as fast as yours. But running 5:10 is already so difficult. So I feel like a lot of faster people say that, whereas like we talked about before, for a lot of regular people, E and M isn't that different. Like those lines blur a little bit more. So to ask them to go run these at 8:50 or 9 flat, I feel like isn't as crazy as asking you to run them at 4:50 or 5 flat.
Yeah, I think that depends on the individual too, because and I think 4 hours is maybe that zone where we start to see more separation between E and M, whereas a 5 hour marathoner, you probably get a little bit less of that.
Oh yeah.
Um, I feel like some of the 4 hour marathoners I've worked at, they tend to train every day around 9:30 to 10 minute pace. So you still do have some separation there between those two. I
Some,
think
but
once
not a huge amount.
no, I'm not considering like, okay, for if you
And
5:20 marathon, like your easy pace is typically probably closer to 7:20 most days.
right, and I think the big part is the faster you get, the bigger the difference in the movement. Like
Sure.
if you watch someone run 7:20 pace and 5:20 pace, it is a lot different of how you engage your hamstrings, or just how your leg cycles, or how much your heel comes up. Like where 9:30 to 9:09, or 10:30 to 9 flat can look kind of the same, of like the actual leg pattern, if that makes sense. Does that make sense at
Yeah,
all?
yeah, it does. Your stride length isn't gonna be too much different, like, your knee drive isn't gonna be too much different, like, all that kind of stuff. So it is yeah, there is less of a difference there for sure. It's a less powerful movement running 9:09 pace versus 10-minute pace than it is running 5:20 pace versus 7:20 pace. So you absolutely have some validity there for sure. And to that point, I do think that a lot of my athletes who I would have do that would end up running a little faster in a lot of those intervals anyway, because they're
Sure.
feeling good and they feel like they want to add a little bit. And we typically end that workout with a threshold mile. So it'd be 5 by 2, and then we do a threshold mile at the end to really just kind of
Woo!
I love to just get people turning over when they're tired, or at least trying to turn over. Maybe it's not exactly threshold, maybe we're a little slower, but it's like, hey, we're switching that gear. Because I just think mentally if we're pacing a marathon right and we're trying to negative split it, like at some point you're still fatigued and you have to switch that gear, and we have to practice that mental gear switch. And I think just end of a long session like that, let's do it for a mile just so you know what it feels like to go from running moderate fast to running fast. Even just because it's going to feel hard, you have to know you have the capability to do it. And we practice that to some degree.
100%. I 2 athletes the past week, I gave this workout that I do a lot in a marathon build, and it was like 6 threshold miles. Take a little break. We do a couple 200s, and then we come at the end and do a mile. It's tough to say. People phrase it a lot, but hard. Like, what do we got? A little bit faster than we do in those threshold. For most people, it's like almost as whatever you can kind of muster up. Like it's not a
Yeah.
race, but like kind of go for it.
I do similar stuff, especially with like half training. We'll do like 6 miles at M, 3 miles at T, and then I throw in that last mile. I'll be like, okay, this is like faster than T.
Yeah,
This is just
see what
hard.
you
I
got.
want this. Yeah, see what you got a little bit, and that's always fun. Anyways, what would be your thing? Your one thing you would have a sub 4 marathoner, or one thing you would have someone to do to break sub 4?
I'm gonna be honest with you. For every question we've ever done like this, I don't think I've ever answered it.
No, you
Like I
never
don't think
do. You just suck all the fun out of it by not answering the question at all.
I've never given just one thing, or I never follow the rules. I'm gonna keep that trend alive. I'm gonna give 2 things.
Great, awesome. Just give
The
3 while we're
first,
at it too.
I might. Let's see how I feel. I'll give like a cool workout like you gave, but the first thing I would do is, and like I kind of alluded at the beginning, is I would make sure this person's incorporating strides throughout their whole block. So a true stride workout, a progression of that throughout the thing. You're amazed. It's amazing how many people come to me who haven't ever done a workout and have run like 410 or 350 or something like that. And so if those people were just had their same mileage and 2-3 times a week we're doing 8 by 15 seconds pretty hard, like you would see big improvements. So yeah, honestly, strides. It's such a lame answer and nobody wants to hear that. But it's like it's one of those things that everyone says, but then it's like when you're going through people's logs, it's like, when's the last time you consistently did strides, you know? Um,
It often falls into like that flexibility, mobility, strength work. It's just like, especially as the miles pile up, like it's one of the first things to fall off. Like you finish your run, you're tired, you don't do your strides, you go in. Like that is incredibly common.
had 2 people this year who made massive improvements, but we got to a point in the season when they started having a little niggle, like a hamstring or calf thing. And the first thing that goes when you have that is your strides. You're like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't want to flare it up. And that's probably the smart move, right? But when you take that whole course of the season and you take all of that fast neuromuscular workout, it's like, oh, we made a 20-minute jump in our marathon, but it could have been 30 if we had all of that neuromuscular coordination in there. So, yeah, get healthy, get those strides in. Um, Second one, super similar to your workout. I've done this a few times in marathon builds, but 10 by a mile, starting at goal pace. So start out the gate at 9:09 and see if we can cut down throughout the course of the workout, and getting down maybe close to 8-minute pace. I like it for a ton of reasons. The first one, we can feel that actual goal pace of what that feels like, and it's just a mile, so it's not going to be overwhelming, and we can do that for a couple. And then, can we cut down throughout the workout? Can we have the patience to not go crazy and run 8 flat on the third one? Can we slowly work our way down? And then, it's a long grinder, and so can you find the mental and physical gear to like be smooth and get through this? It's a long run. Same as 5 by 2 miles. Like, it's a long run. It's um but there's a lot of movement faster. It breaks up into chunks so we know we can get through it. It's long enough to practice fueling. But I like having that work that's a little bit quicker. So those would be my 2 answers. The other one, actually, right, I am going to give 3 answers because I'm a bad boy. It's volume. Like I'm such a believer in volume and strides and maybe some hill sprints. They get you like 85% there. And so if you're really struggling and you plateaued, like what's your volume at, you know?
That's
How many 35-mile a weeks do you have? Uh, you know, yeah, what's the consistent volume over the year?
it's such a funny answer. I totally agree. I had this argument. I was once working with this when I lived in Tucson. I was working with this track club in Tucson. I was helping coach. I was like just showing up and running people through drills, and we did like this coaching thing where we all sat in front of the team, one day, and they answered questions. And someone had asked me something along, well, what's like one thing that you would do to like get better? And I was like, well, first thing I would do is look like, how much are you running? Because one easy way to get better running is just to run more. And then the other coaches almost had an aneurysm and just argue with me about like, oh, we have to add structure. I'm like, well, at its simplest, like if you're only running 30 miles a week, if you run 40 miles a week, you're going to get more fit. Like at its just absolute basis level. It's just one of those things that, yes, it was definitely triggering for some people. As Will walks away again, and I'm just gonna have to sit here and vamp a little more. But yeah, I totally agree. I think like sometimes you just have to look for some low hanging fruit, and it's not the sexiest answer. Not everybody likes to be told, well, I mean, if you're only doing 35 miles a week, like, can you add 10 miles a week? Can we do 2 miles more on a Thursday, 2 miles more on a Tuesday? And then can we add some to the long run? But oftentimes that can be just one easy way to get better.
Everybody wants to hear that the secret is actually you need to stretch more or you need to take creatine now because creatine's cool or it was ketones, but nobody likes that answer. But yeah, but if you think about what running is, it's not a competition of who's the most flexible or who has the most activated glutes. Like it's a purely aerobic endeavor. We know how the aerobic system makes adaptations and changes and improves. A huge part of it is time spent in any aerobic capacity. If you spend 5 hours in somewhat of an aerobic zone versus 4 hours a week, you'll improve more in the 5 hour up to a certain point. There's tons of context there, but for the most part, it needs the quantity of stimulus, not even just the quality to improve. It's the same with our threshold system. It's like every study you read on lactate threshold. How do you improve it? Time spent per week at lactate threshold, which is true of almost every system, all the way up. Maybe not some of the really fast sprinting stuff, but even that, if you do strides once a month versus 8 times a month, which one do you think is going to improve your neuromuscular coordination? So, yeah, that is a big one, and that plateaus. There's a point like, I've had people come to me who are hitting 60 miles a week for years, and it's like, and they're trying to break 330 or something. It's like, well, yeah, you've kind of got this one out. Let's get on the strides and strength and threshold now, and vice versa. There's, but yeah, it makes a huge difference. It's a reason there's so much stuff about mileage, and it's just like, and I tell people that days of the week, if you can go from 3 days to 4 days a week, makes a big difference. If you can go from 4 days to 5 days a week running, makes a big difference. So yeah, that's definitely something I would consider and think
That
about
might
if you're
be
trying
like
to break
the
four.
other cheat code for sub 4. Like if you're only running 4 days a week, like run 5 days a week, like just add a fifth day. Like that might be the answer to be to be
Well,
honest.
so many people come, a lot of those people are running 3 days a week. And I tell them, your body spends more days not running than running. And you're trying to create this adaptation and run 26 miles, but it's like on average, you don't run. So at least getting to 4, you run more days than you don't run, you know, um, which is huge for making adaptations. And so,
And it's huge for just getting adjusted for what the marathon. I mean, the marathon is a battle against accumulated fatigue, and if you never accumulate fatigue because you're only running 3 days a week or 4 days a week, like you're never going to be really adapted to the rigors of the race. And for the marathon, you can never be fully adapted to that because it is such an extreme thing. But you can get as close as you can, and part of doing that is adding some days and adding some volume to it. So for sure. That might be the answer. Like if you're only running 4 days a week and you haven't broken 4 yet, run 5 days a week. Start there.
let me pitch something. I tell people all the time. In my experience, I've seen a big jump from people that go from 3 to 4 and 4 to 5. I see a jump from 5 to 6 and 6 to 7, but not as big as those middle ones. Do you agree, disagree with that?
I fully agree. Yeah, I think the jump from like 5 to 6 is like you're trying to snag a BQ. You're trying to run sub 3. You're trying to run 240. Like I think that 5 to 6 jump lives somewhere in that range. And 6 to
Right.
7, I mean, Ryan Hall only ran 6 days a week. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you're not going to see as much of a jump there, nearly as much as from 6 to 7. So
That's probably more of an individualistic thing. Like personally, I didn't like 6 when I was running really competitively. Like it felt like it kind of got my rhythm off a little bit. Um, I don't know. It made me
yeah,
feel
I would take a
worse.
day off like every 3 weeks, maybe every couple weeks. You throw a day off in there just for
Yeah.
maybe sanity's sake. But I do think the jump from 4 to 5, like that's the big jump. That's the important
Yeah.
one. That's where you
3 to
really see
4
it.
for me is too. I
And
think
3 to
those
4, yeah.
two, I see a huge difference in performance. And obviously we need a couple months at that, but that's something I'm always really pushing because people ask like, oh, I've been doing 3. What do you think? And I'm like, 3 is great. If you want to run faster, I think 4 is better. I think 5 is better than that.
And I also think your body just feels better when you're running 4 or 5. Like it's just more of a routine. Like it's just a
Yes.
regular part of your day. It's your body's adjusted to it. Like when you're running 3 days a week, it doesn't feel like a routine yet. You're running 4 or 5, that's a routine. Your body's used to it. And I think there is something to be said for that.
Was just explaining this to someone because whenever I'm around people who don't run at all, they're like, Saturday I was at dinner and someone's like, "How far did you run this morning?" I ran 15 miles on Saturday, which to a regular person sounds insane. I get that, but been doing this for 20 years and almost every day, probably 90% of days for 20, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years. I don't know, really long time. Uh, my body is so used that it is not difficult anymore. Like to run 10 miles isn't really that hard. I might have to slow down a little bit, but I can do it and then go have a completely normal day and have no soreness and live a day the next day. And I think running is completely different once you get to some sort of point like that, where just the act of running is no longer a difficult physiological task. Like you go do your easy run and the next day everything's fine, or I mean I did that track workout this morning. I feel fine and I will feel fine tomorrow. And that's like it was a very easy workout. But um you gotta spend years and you gotta have some volume and you gotta build up to that over time. But that is such a game changer once you mentally and physically get to that point.
It's kind of like on a deeper level. It's like if you don't go to the gym for 3 months and then you go do a bunch of squats, like you're going to be horribly sore. And you're going to feel affected the next day. Same thing if you haven't run or have only run a day or two a week for 3 weeks, then you go try to run a half marathon. Like you're going to feel really bad. But if you go to the gym 3 times a week, all of a sudden that soreness goes away and everything feels normal. Same thing with running. I mean, it might not be the same soreness, but the fatigue level and the degree to which your body feels that impact lessens a little bit and you get more used to it and you feel better about it. And being in that routine it's a powerful feeling because then you do feel like, oh yeah, I can go run 8 miles today and I will feel totally normal. And there's something cool about that.
Dude, it's also hard for people. You're saying that it's making me think of a lot of things. Like, yes, I haven't been lifting a lot lately. Need to get better about that. But like, yeah, when I start lifting again, first couple times, it's gonna be a little rough. Like, it's gonna be some of that soreness. But the
Yeah.
whole point is to get past that point of where it impacts me that much. And I have some really good prehab and strength like specific running routines. And sometimes like after a couple of months, people will be like, "Oh yeah, it didn't make me sore," or "I don't know, I didn't feel that much." And I'm like, "That's great though." Like you want to be able to do single leg calf raise and then live your life the next day. So you get
Yeah.
the
That's kind of the
activation, you get
point.
the
Yeah.
strength. Yeah, but sometimes people are like, "Well, it didn't work because like it didn't really hurt that bad." It's like, no, that's the best part of it. Like where you have these important movements that no longer negatively impact you. That's just the positive part. So it's hard for people to get that mind. And when people talk to us about running, like regular people, that's the thing that they don't understand. They think when we run 15 miles or when I run 10 miles with my friends, they don't realize I'm giggling and telling really funny stories, like really funny the whole time.
Kind of funny.
They're pretty funny. People are falling over laughing. We're having to take
just,
breaks.
just people rolling over in the ditch,
Hands
cracking
and
up.
knees.
Yeah. Now they're
Jesus,
unable to
Will.
breathe. Yeah. Okay.
Class clown
Great.
over here.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that's what nobody's huffing and puffing. It's just giggles. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely know what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. I don't really run with people that much, so there's no
But
jokes
you've
being
run with me.
told. Yeah.
You know how.
Yeah. Oh, I know how it goes. So yeah, I know that. The last time I ran with you, I almost fell over in Tempe Town Lake. I was running, so I was laughing so hard. It was yeah.
It's just I don't know. Some people have it.
Coming to a city near you, Will Baldwin. Get your tickets now. Will Baldwin Comedy Hour. Anything else on this?
How to break 4 hours. Hey, dude, little strides, little volume, and then start incorporating a little bit of stuff faster than race pace. We gave some good sessions that you want to build up to. Those are like 3-4 weeks out. This is like the big dog, right?
Yeah, we're not doing that 3 weeks into the buildup.
No, 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 no.
We're,
Volume and
we're,
strides.
we're
Start
pushing that
there.
out later. Yeah, volume strides. Start with little pieces, build them into
Let
bigger
me
pieces, taper it
let me
down.
add something here. A lot of folks come to
Please.
me, and I tell them this all the time. Hey, if we perfect your fueling and I never train you, you might hit your goal. Like, if you're a 410 guy, some people come to me like, oh, last marathon I took 2 goos. I'm like, brother, if you take an every second, every 30 minutes, you might do this and I might never give you a workout. Now I'm going to give you workouts, but you might get there without that. You know what I'm saying?
For some reason, you just sound like Matthew McConaughey right there for a hot second. It was cracking me up. But no, I 100% agree. This is like the fourth one tip to get you under 4, and the fourth one tip to get you under 4 is to actually do nutrition, which is a great point because it's like, well, I'm just gonna take what's on course. So, all right, so you're gonna have a GU at like 13 and a GU at 20. Like that's not getting it done. You gotta, we're doing gels every 30 minutes. We're doing every seconds, Morton's, whatever your fancy is. But yeah.
Yeah.
Brother, we
Yeah.
gotta have
Every
some goos.
Not a good guy. 4 hour people. Another good topic here. I've had more and more people like that wearing a naked belt and carrying some water. And I think the further you are above 3, the more that can make sense.
Yeah, it makes sense for anybody. I'm looking to run a marathon January next year, and I'm probably going to wear a belt and bring my own water because I don't want to stop and have to grab all those stupid little cups. At least for the first hour, I'll only bring a bottle. That
Right, yeah,
bottle's
yeah.
gone. Yeah, but
Sometimes
then
if you
it's
have someone on course, you can have someone hand you another one. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's a good way to get some carbs that first hour. You're not grabbing the cups. It keeps you on top of your hydration. You can keep gels in those belts. I'm a big naked belt fan. I have a discount code too. I can throw it in here too, um, for everybody. But yeah, you can stash so much crap in there in a soft flask, and um, yeah, I think especially for the people trying to break 4, I think it's a pretty good idea.
a great idea. Yeah, I have one guy who carries his own. He'll just carry in his hand a bottle of Gatorade, and that's what he does. I've tried to talk to him like, hey, why don't you get a belt or a handheld? He likes to just carry the bottle of Gatorade in his hand. But hey, like carry some fluids and some gels early on. Like you're gonna save yourself a lot of pain.
Yeah, don't carry a hard plastic bottle in your hand. I don't love that idea. It makes things difficult. They make great soft flasks these days. I have one from Nathan. It's insulated and it works so well. Yeah, you can throw that carb mix in there. And yeah, and then when you're done, you throw it in a belt. I use a naked belt. It's what I recommend to all my athletes. It can store so much junk. And yeah, I've had more and more people do that the last few years, and I think it's a really smart idea. So that's something I would also consider. Really, I have a great article on fueling. If you know absolutely nothing and you don't want to work with someone, read that. It'll walk you through what to do. But follow that.
Runbaldwin.com.
Runbaldwin.com. Follow that and get a belt. That could be the thing that gets you under 4 TBH.
Well, and honestly, like now there's like so many good shorts and half tights and stuff that have like tons of pockets, or even if you don't want to bring a bottle, like you can stash a bunch of gels and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Like you can carry a bunch of stuff like outside. I mean, the landscape used to be we had to safety pin gels to our split shorts
crazy.
back in the day. Like now we are in heaven with these big pocket shorts and stuff. So even
I've
if you don't want
I've
to do a
Hoka
bottle,
and Rabbit shorts that have an integrated belt. I don't like putting water in those. I don't think they're
just
sturdy enough to carry a water bottle. I use a naked belt for that. But on runs where I don't think I need water, but I want like a couple gels and maybe my phone or something, they work pretty good for that.
yeah, I got a pair of rabbit shorts. I got half tights that can fit a phone
Yeah,
and 12 gels pretty comfortably. So
crazy.
lot of options out there. To the crux of it is just carry some nutrition with you. You're gonna be thankful for that.
Um, what else do you want to talk about, man?
I mean, we can talk about anything. How are you doing? How's your running going?
I'm gonna run Boulder, the 10K. I think I have like 2 or 3 months.
Memorial Day,
I'm
right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna really be focused the next 3 months and really try to crush that. Beat my time from last year. Not in great shape, but I'm in a better position than I was last year because I was just coming off that leg. So when I broke my tibia, so I feel good about that. Um, Other than that, everything else is going good. Coaching's been awesome. I've been loving doing the pod. Feel real inspired. Um, Having a lot of fun.
Hell yeah, love to hear that. That's great. Makes
How's
me
your
happy.
child?
Baby boy's doing great. 2 months old, which is crazy. He's happy. He's healthy. Mom's happy and healthy. We're doing awesome. Yeah.
Should
My
you
run.
start feeding him bicarb now so he's used to it?
Yeah, we mix it in with the breast milk. We do bicarb and breast milk every day. Toss some
Very
creatine in
cool.
there. He's a little muscle. He's a little muscle man.
Creatine.
Yeah.
Are you getting those ads? Creatine's hot right now.
I don't think I'm getting those ads right now. No, not those.
What ads are you getting?
I get all kinds of weird ads, man. We don't need to take that here. Take that
Okay.
offline. Yeah. But definitely not getting creatine ads. You get a lot of
Uh,
ads for like Theragun and other like, stuff like that, but no creatine. But yeah, it's just because of mold.
yeah. Um, Encouragement. How can we encourage people to break for? Race selection's another big thing. You know, there's some marathons are hard and hilly.
I would say most
Picking
of them
good
are hard
courses.
and hilly. Like it's easier to pick a bad course than it is to find a good course. I think a lot of course, and it's not just like the marathon, like the courses are bad. There are tons of turns. Like the setups aren't ideal. Like it's just too easy to find a bad course. Like I mean, and I have a whole. I can show you my notes app. I told you about this earlier, but I have a whole thing on race selection. It's a topic of its own. We can talk about someday. There it
Yeah,
is.
we
Whisper
will.
camera. 4 questions
We
on how
will.
to pick your race. So I don't think we have to dig too far on that, but don't pick a bad race if you're trying to break four.
I got one for you.
Hit me.
What should people not do trying to break for? I got one. I'll go first. I've had a lot of people do this, and we've talked about this before. This is just how people think of running in these type of milestones. But someone comes to me, they're like, "Yeah, I want to break four." Every weekend, I go out and I just run 909 pace, and I see how long I can run it for. I'm up to
Don't do
like
that.
I'm up to like 11 miles, and it
That's
and
not a
like I
good
get
one.
it. It's like it's so simplistic, but it's like, yeah, you're gonna kind of like want to warm up and like you need some other paces too. We know, like, the reason I gave my workout the way it was is because we know you probably are going to improve more doing threshold stuff than just straight in pace. And so, yeah, like you need some actual fartleks and different types of intervals to build up into that. It's pretty rare that anybody would ever do that as a workout. Usually you want to break that apart and do some stuff faster. So that type of training is usually something we work on breaking people out of. What do you have? What's something stupid people are doing to try to break for?
I don't know if it's things stupid people are doing to try to break four, or just things that people are doing that are holding them back from breaking four. Like don't wear the same pair of shoes for your whole build up. Have multiple pairs of shoes. Stay
Ooh,
healthy. Don't do your long runs without nutrition. Like take nutrition on your long runs so you recover better and that you feel better and you can actually practice what you're going to do on race day. don't do your long runs in the middle of the day if it's hot. Like, it's just I think there's so many like little common sense things that you and I would take for granted that people end up doing, that it's just a matter of, you know, just like, hey, these are really simple things that you can do to make the whole experience better, and that are going to help you on the way to breaking four. Those would be a few options.
Another tip: you're trying to break 4 in the marathon. It's like that quote of like, when's the best time to plant a tree? It was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. These timelines, be like, oh, what do I do? Do I train for 12 weeks, 8 weeks? And it's like, start running now. Start running 20 weeks ago. It's like, the more time you have spent running, the better it's gonna go. Don't be like, I'm gonna train for 3 months or something. It's like, you should be running as soon as as soon as you're able.
You do hear that, like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon in October, so I think I'm going to start training in June. Like, why wouldn't you just start training now? Like, just start running now. You're going to be way better spot.
We've talked about this with clients too.
Yeah.
When
Oh yeah.
someone schedules a call in January and they're like, I have a race in November, I'm like, this is gonna go so well.
Yeah.
And when someone does that, they're like, oh yeah, I have a race in October. I'll hit you up in July. And you're like, sure. But like, it's so different. We don't, and I guess it makes us, I always feel bad because it makes us sound like scammy, or it's like, oh, I want more money. I want you here for longer. But it's like, it's not. It's like, if we can't build you up and do all those important things like the neuromuscular conditioning, and have strides and safely help you raise your volume and figure out where that is, and help you figure out how to incorporate strength training and practice fueling throughout the year. When we can do that, it's insane what we can do with people. I've cut an hour off someone's marathon in a year.
I mean, like that portion of time, I wrote about this a little bit on my blog, HiltonPerformanceRunning.com, recently, about how to set the table for your next marathon build, like what to do in the weeks leading up to it. But that period of time when you're getting ready for a marathon buildup is, I mean, God, it's almost as important, because then we can hit all the stuff that you're not going to be able to focus on for them. We can do the speed, we can do a lot of VO2 work, we can try to do things that are going to raise your ceiling for your marathon that you don't get to do if you're just like piecing together 10 weeks of like easy running or on and off stuff between the race. Like, you're not setting yourself up well. Training is like compounding interest. Like, the more you can just stack and stack and stack on top of it, the better off you're going to be. But if you take a break from that stacking, like, you're still going to get some benefits, but you're going to limit the number of benefits that you get. And those in between times are so important to just hit things that we wouldn't normally hit if you're just doing marathon build to marathon build. That it's super important to have structure then.
Yeah, Mark Wetmore, who used to coach at Colorado and Boulder for a long time, he used to say, like, when the guys came in from the summer, like, they came in August, even though the season wasn't going to end for like 3-4 months, he was like, yeah, I pretty much know, like, first couple weeks, like, what our team's going to be like and like how good we're going to be, like, because yeah, you can only running improvements take a long time. They just take time. It takes time spent, and it takes a long time of weeks and months. And so, he was just like, yeah, like, there's only so much we can do in 3 months. Like, I'm not going to make someone insanely better outside of these like freak athletes. But yeah, a lot of that stuff is decided months and months ago, but based on where you're at. And so, yeah.
I mean, a lot of times how you do in your current marathon build, a lot of that stuff is precipitated from your previous build.
Season before the season.
Yep. Well, I think that's a good place to end this on, my man. Any final thoughts?
Just love you to give me a compliment, give me some confidence for the rest of the day.
I compliment you every time we have one of these things. Tell you how handsome you are. I told you I liked your hat, and you looked ruggedly handsome with your beard. What else do you want me to hear? Do you want to hear from me?
Just a new, different one.
I appreciate the level of thoughtfulness that goes into your coaching business.
Dude, that's so sick. I really like your shirt you're wearing.
Thank you. I wear this shirt 4 times a week.
Hey, just take the compliment. Don't degrade it, okay?
I'm not very good at taking compliments, so this is par for the course for me. Yeah. Well, on that note, for Mr. Will, my name is Nick. Thank you for listening to the Mind Your Miles podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe to YouTube. Check us out on Spotify. Please leave a comment. We like to hear from you. Leave us a 5-star review, only if you feel like we earn it. And if we haven't earned it, just leave one anyway. That would be really nice of you. As you can tell, we need the compliments. Reach out, mindyourmilespod@gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, you have anything you want us to discuss, You can find us on Substack, mindyourmiles.substack.com. We do some written content there. Your boy is trying to do better about making sure we're keeping all that stuff updated. So I promise we'll see some stuff coming up there. You can sign up for our email list. Keep your eyes out. We have some other cool stuff coming down the pipe, training plans, maybe a live pod here or there if we can get, more than a dozen people interested in that.
2025 is our year, bro.
Yeah, it's our year. We have a new Instagram. Follow us at Mind Your Miles on Instagram. There is literally nothing on there right now, but we are about to load that mofo up with some good stuff. So follow us there as well. On behalf of Will, this is Nick. Thank you so much for listening to the Mind Your Miles podcast, and we will catch you next time.